I'm Jim Rimbach, president of CX Global Media and host of the Customer Service Weekly podcast powered by PACE, the official podcast of National Customer Service Week, where our purpose is to help you ignite CX celebration all year. Each episode, I meet with senior leaders from top brands as they share their story on how they recognize and lead the people and solutions that help their organizations to deliver a customer experience that separates their organization from others, so you can ignite your own CX celebration. And now, on to the show. Okay, CX Igniters, I want to welcome you to the official podcast of National Customer Service Week. And we have on the show today a very special guest because I have had the opportunity to really look into this entire space that he works in and looking at also how it's been really impacted with some of the things that we've gone through recently in regards to this COVID and, order at home and meal kits and healthy eating. And some of us have gone the wrong direction when it comes to healthy eating, but still it's providing an excellent customer experience, which is the most important. That is both in product and service. And so we actually have Brett Frazer, who is the VP of Customer Service for Sunbasket. And he's going to share a little bit about his perspective in regards to igniting a customer experience celebration all year long. But first, Brett, welcome to the show. And if you could tell us a little bit more about your background and experience, because you don't have the same accent as many of us in North Carolina.
Absolutely. So great to be here. Thank you very much for having me and having the opportunity to share a little of the Sunbasket story and how we focus on igniting our service experience through our staff. My background, I started in the customer service world at Microsoft in 1996, shortly after Windows 95 launched. It was a way to get myself, honestly, into massage therapy. I had planned to become a sports massage therapist, and I took a job through a temp agency in Texas. No, the accent's not from Texas, but that's where I started my kind of customer service career from, the contact center space. Originally, I'm from New Zealand, and I was an exchange student in Texas and ended up moving back there and got a job through a contact at Microsoft. And ended up staying there 12 and a half years. So I started as a customer service rep and worked my way through different roles into quality assurance, into team management, then into program management, running COPC certification for Sunbasket, for Microsoft rather, back in the day. And then had a great opportunity to take me to set up a Asia Pacific customer service organization for Microsoft in China. So I had from New Zealand originally, went to Texas and lived there. Then spent nearly a year living in China, setting up that Asia Pacific organization. And then the China headquarters moved into Singapore. So I moved my family and we spent the next 7.5 years in Singapore, 5 of that with Microsoft, and became regional director for Asia Pacific. Then joined Adobe in their customer service and technical support organization. And then I took a little bit of a sideways step, went into organizational development. So I took a lot of the things that I've been focusing around team and team excellence and how to grow teams, management skills, etc., and moved more into the organizational development world for a while. And then I missed the customer. I really worked across. I had a great time. I learned a lot about the rest of part of the business and worked with all different facets of the organization at Adobe. That gave me a really good expansion and be able to bring that back into the customer service world. Did a little bit of a spot on the outsource side with Sutherland. And then about nearly 4.5 years ago, I got a phone call, actually nearly 5 years ago, I got a phone call from this little company called Sunbasket, which was a startup company in the food meal kit space. And everything just really kind of aligned for me at that point. I had this years of wealth of experience I've been building and, all these different things that I'd learned from these big, large multinational companies and being able to bring that customer service bend. But I also grew up on a farm in New Zealand. My father was a vet. We had a beef cattle farm. And so I'd always had this element of farming and really natural farming behind me. And pair that with, from a very young age, my parents had us all cook one night a week. And so my brother was kind of like most people. He had his 5 to 10 meals he'd rotate through. My sister cooked the exact same meal every Wednesday night for 4 years. I would never order Hungarian goulash again in my life. And one of my goals was to cook something different every week. And so I just had this element of food. And so, here I fast forward into my life, into my 40s, and suddenly this great opportunity to bring this wealth of experience I had with customer service into this passion and background I had around, farming and good earth farming and food. And so this really great marriage of that experience and that background and passion came together.
Well, and as you're talking, I start thinking about the experience, like you had mentioned, with the national logos and organizations. But then you have also had some localization differences by being, in different geographic locales. So when you start thinking about, customer experience and customer service week, I mean, how have you celebrated some of that in the past?
So in the past, I've got to be honest, one of the best things coming into our team, one of my employees, and he's our senior operations manager, a guy called Sean Satterfield, when he came on board shortly after, he brought the CEO philosophy with him, the customer small c, big E, employee small o organization. And so that really was a great infusement in his mindset, of coming and saying, okay, how do we really think about our employees, not just in the customer service week, but kind of all year round, and how do we make sure that they're at the center of how do we bring the connection between our customers and our organization together to create these experiences. And so across customer service week, we've done great things like, having, potlucks, or bringing in pizzas or donuts, or, those kind of small things. We've had, our COO, who was our leader at the time, come in and speak to the team, and other leaders kind of make sure the team felt their importance. But really our focus has been less on what's that one big thing we do each year, and more on how do we find a lot of events, a lot of activities, and how do we do that ongoing activity to really make sure that our agents and our staff feel that they are the center of that experience, and they know that they're appreciated for that all year round.
Well, as you're talking, I've had a little bit of insight into the Sunbasket operation by some previous folks that I have had the opportunity to meet with, and I know you guys do take a different approach and look at the development quite differently for your agents on the line, and you almost go beyond that individual contributor component and try to develop the leadership type of skills in everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of those elements is you are your own leader. Everybody is their own leader, right? And everybody can be in a position to be a leader. And through my career as well, I had the opportunity. I was an agent, and I see that as the customer service as a huge path into organizations. And so we've always had this approach, whether we had internal staff, whether we've worked with partners, etc. And we're really making sure that agent development and agent experience has been key to what we look at, to the point where my OKRs, my top OKR is employee experience, and my second OKR is customer experience. And so, there's been some definite things we've done in that element of really helping people, making sure that that conversation between manager and agent, is not just about their job today, but where do they want to be in the future. Most of the development within the team has come from within the team. And so we've got operations people and we've got line people. Pretty much everybody on my operations team started off as a customer service agent. And so we look for what was that passion, what was that, the thing that somebody's interested in to be able to build and develop. We created a management development program, and we created the first year, and we had our managers lead it. And then we flipped the dime on that, and we had our first year of graduates turn around and teach that the next year and the years after that into their next round of that. And so really continuing to focus on that piece of, how do we develop up? And it's not just up in the customer service organization, it's up within the Sunbasket organization. We've got people from our team who've gone on into the development team, who are QA folks, who are product management. We've got people who moved into the marketing organization, and we've got people who moved into the business development organization. And I've always seen customer service as that great breeding ground for you bring people in, you kind of identify what's that passion, and you help them to harness that passion and put it in the direction that's going to be most beneficial for them in the future, be that with your company or somewhere else. You know, my former head of HR had a wonderful quote on his wall that I loved the first time I saw it, and I believed it for a long time, which was a CEO talking to the head of HR and say, what if we develop our people and they leave? And the HR guy, head of HR's response is, what if we don't and they stay, right? And that's the thing. You've got to realize people are going to leave, but you've got to be able to make sure they get the best out of that experience while they're here to give you that best, and that they know that you've got their best interest in heart.
Yeah, I think ultimately I've seen the long-term effect and impact being creating the exiting ambassador.
Absolutely.
But I know that when you start talking about, your years of experience, and you probably had a couple things when you were going through that celebrating, and trying to carry forth, the spirit all year, that didn't go so well. And it was a lesson learned. Is there one of those that you can remember that you can share?
Yeah, I think, probably the biggest thing on that is just kind of focusing on just things that really don't have anything to do with the customer. And I think that's the element that I've seen in the past is it's like, oh, it's a lunch and it's just all about, hey, we can have a lunch together. Or, if you're really trying to do something to emphasize customer service week, the customer still needs to be at the base of it. And so, when we've done things that have had the most impact, it's really been about celebrating our team and their activity towards the customer. And so, I think probably the one that sticks out at me most was from a previous company where, it was all about, games, right? And the games had nothing to do with the customer. And, the first game, it was like, okay, everybody's getting there. And you kind of notice after time that it just kind of fell apart because there wasn't any attachment back into the reason why we were there. And so I kind of would think if there's something that you're doing, just if you're focusing on that week and if you're really using that week to kickstart and move forward, or, as an element of there, bring back intention and make sure that there's that intention around how this relates back into the customer and how it relates back into celebrating the excellence that your team brings into that customer experience.
I think that's a very interesting point because sometimes, there is a lack of that congruence. There is inherently, oftentimes, in a lot of organizations, somewhat of a disconnect between, what that person is doing on the phone and how it does impact the overall business. And this may be a good opportunity to do those types of things, is help to make that connection and those connections more clear than they had been in the past.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're going to create a game around it, kind of create a game around how do you, get your company organization objectives and how do you align things back up into that. So get creative around how do you reinforce those things with your employees that are going to come back up into helping out the company. I wrote I'm not sure if it's true or not because stats are stats, but I read a stat yesterday of, less than 2% of employees can truly talk about what the key objectives of any organization are. And so if you're really looking to be able to reinforce those, take those opportunities to, subtly make those connections between what it is that your agents are doing on a day-to-day basis, that individual customer interaction, and how that helps to drive the overall impact and direction of the business.
So business acumen, I think we can all do a better job of being able to improve our competencies in that particular area, and that's a great way of doing that. Okay, so I do think, and I've been guilty of this myself, that oftentimes we will, start getting attracted to some things that, seem to be cool, that seem to be in the spotlight, and there are myths and misconceptions in regards to doing, celebration and recognition and things like that. Is there something that you feel is just quite overrated?
I'm not sure if there's anything that's kind of, honestly, that I don't have that's really overrated from that piece. I think, I'm going to pass on that one for right now, to be honest. There's nothing that I can just say this in and of itself is overrated, except for maybe, bringing in donuts, right? For us, it's kind of a balance because we're a healthy food company. We still do bring in the sweet stuff every now and again. I think, what's underrated is really bringing your employees in to that decision making to begin with, of identifying what is it that they're looking for in order to be celebrated in that piece. And I think one thing that's key and often missed in that element is how do you bring, other parts of the company out, of those executives, et cetera, in, so that, they can truly share that perspective from their point of view of how your team and your customer service staff are having that positive impact on the business. So I think that's one thing that they really miss. I think quite often, for a long time, and some companies it's still seen this way, you're the cost center, right? And it's all about cost cutting and cost cutting and cost cutting. And not being able to really bring in that perspective of, well, when you are doing that work, how does that relate back up? Can kind of feel like you're the tail of the dog, and that, you really have little control over what's happening. You're kind of at the whim of everybody else. But the reality is, if you truly have a really strong connection between what the objectives are of the company, and you've got a leadership team that you've really helped to, and sometimes educate as a leader on that tie-in, and really have them come back and make that connection, that's really where I think a huge amount of value in that customer service week can be, because, there is an intent, and hopefully you can get that value idea and that value feedback from the business all year round. But sometimes we only have that short window, right? We can do whatever we want for the entire year, but sometimes you get that special highlight of that window from executive staff. And so I think that's really a huge underrated opportunity for leaders to pick up on that hasn't been.
Most definitely. Talking about, your wealth of experience and all the things that you've done in the past and how it's culminated into the things that you're doing today and in your ongoing learning. Well, the world, it's a new world, right? New reality.
Yeah.
How have you changed some of the things that you're doing because of us now being, forced remote and everything else that has gone along with it, in regards to igniting, carrying on that CX spirit, and then also, maybe celebrating this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the things that are changing, obviously, is kind of the method by which the communication happens. Slack, and Zoom and things like that become far more important than they were. I mean, we've been a Slack company since I started, as far as that communication, and Slack channels have always been a great piece. But when you're not in the office with somebody, that ability to reach out and have that connection, and to send a Slack or to set up a quick call or set up a quick meeting is becomes even more important to be able to get that through. For me, there's other ways that I've kind of expanded upon more, but I've always done. But I find myself now, one of the key things I do every week is reading through verbatim from customer satisfaction surveys, is picking out those ones that have high regard for agents, and sharing those out in the kudos. And so our managers do it, our leads from our outsource partner do it, but it's really important for me to make sure that they hear from me, that I see and I recognize when those individuals get recognized by customers. So we've got a kudos channel in Slack, and so every week I'm picking up either things I see through the survey feedback, or when I'm doing call coaching and somebody does a great job, I highlight it back out. And if it's somebody who I know likes that public, then I'll publicly highlight it. If it's somebody I know is really that person and they kind of shy away from being in the spotlight, I'll just hit that to them directly. And so that's another piece as well, is kind of understand your people, right? There's things you do on group, and group's fine because you can kind of hide in a group if you're not a very public person. But if you're a private person, sometimes being shown up in a public way has a backlash. And so, really part of that is understanding your people and understanding your team. And, even if you don't necessarily have that opportunity to talk to them directly yourself, make sure you're talking to their manager and their lead. Make sure that you're getting sure, hey, how does this person like to be recognized, and those types of things. So those are activities that I'm doing more of and really placing more emphasis on. Even little things like, start of the day, end of the day message out to everybody of, hey, have a great day today, everybody. Hey, it's cut-off day. Let's make sure we're really, helping those customers as, with any issues they're having on the cusp, and those types of things, and just kind of making that element. So those are some of those small things just on the day-to-day basis. Some things that we'll continue to do that will be different in the future. You see things like the Stevie Awards as an amazing opportunity to highlight great experience and great achievement from agents across the year. So going into next year, it's probably going to be a virtual event, right? And it's going to be different, but that's the type of thing that we'll continue to do and use as a way to really highlight and celebrate those who've really stepped up and just crushed it across the year.
Well, is there, talking about, all the different changes and the adjustments and all of that, do you think that there's some things right now from a customer experience perspective and employee experience that used to be true, which are now false?
Well, I think one of the biggest things two things, right? One is you can't work from home. It's too hard to kind of manage a work from home business and be successful because there's all these distractions and people aren't going to focus and they're not going to do their work. I think the world's just proved that work from home for most things is possible when you don't have to physically have your hand on a product. Obviously, our people boxing our amazing sunbaskets every week have to be in our facility. But those who are handling our customers and assisting our customers on a day-to-day basis, that doesn't have to be, right? And so I think that's one big, fallacy of that. Oh, we've got to have control. We've got to be able to touch our people to make sure that they're doing their work. Now, are there some lower elements of efficiency in some places? Yes, right? Do you then open yourself up to some more things like infrastructure issues that when you're in a major facility aren't as major as when people are home? Yes. But you give those people the same amount of trust, you give them that amount of capability, you give them the support that they need, and they're going to want to perform. So I think the first one is that piece of work at home versus working in center. And one thing that I out of this, I hope that I never hear from the customer service industry again is in-house agents being called captive agents. I have no idea why that term ever came up. And every time I hear someone talk about, my captive agents, I cringe, right? And it just, to me, it's like the total wrong mindset to think about your people, right? You've got to, set people up to be free to do the things that they can do and treat them like they're going to make a difference, and they will. So I think that's the first one. The second one on the customer experience is around, AI and what customers want to do and where they want to go. We've seen over this last period of time with volumes going up, volumes going down, lots of change, lots of adjustments in that, and really that capability of, as leaders, as long as you're focused on making sure that you're trying to automate the right things and that you always have an out to a human, even if you think it's the right thing to automate it, customers will want to engage. They'll go where where that resistance or where that is at that time. And one day they might want to use your automation. The next day for the same type of thing, they might want to use a person. Or even they might want to continue using automation, but I think there's certain times where you need to inject a person and especially just kind of keep that relationship if there be multiple issues. You don't want to just keep passing them off to an automated situation. So I think for me, those are two things that have really shone in this period of time, is that capability of working from anywhere. With the right, the right environment. Obviously, if you're on the phone, you can't work from just anywhere. But also that element of really being able to create those right opportunities to give your customers the balance of how they want to interact with you from anywhere.
Well, okay. So great insight into that, as well as being able to look at your past experience in the different geographic locations that you worked. And so for me, it leads me to the question to ask, if there was a senior leader who was, maybe new to a role or has some aspirations to be a senior leader, what's a piece of advice you give them?
Well, I think two things. Firstly is you got to realize that great customer experiences are created by great employees, and great employees only can do that when they've got great employee experiences. So by focusing on your employees, you are focusing on your customer. I hear quite often this, my customer has to be my number one. Well, in order to make your customer your number one, you've got to make the people who are focused on your customer feel like they truly are your number one. And so I think that's the first key piece. And the second element is customer service is this gold mine of information for your organization. You've really got to be able to set yourself up within your organization to really identify how you take that information that's happening on the day-to-day basis and not just focus on how do I make a great experience when the customer contacts me, but how do I make a better experience in the service, the product, the offering, so that we don't have to have the customer contact us in the first place, or we're having them contact us for those reasons we want to engage with them. And so I think that's a huge burden upon us as executives in the customer service space, is to really raise that element to the organization and to wag the dog, with that information and really create those relationships within your company so that you can be seen as that trusted source of information of improvement opportunity.
Well, and as you're saying that, I start thinking about a lot of things in regards to talking about shifting of the business, and that senior leaders of today, with the now new work environment and the work flow and framework and all of those things, have a different type of visibility when they're remote. So when you start thinking about, as a senior leader, something that you wish you had a little bit more visibility into, what would it be?
I think I would like a little bit more of an insight on an ongoing basis into kind of the feeling of our agents. Right, we've got quarterly surveys, which is great, and we've done a really good focus on driving that. And I think having that ability to pulse a little bit across that period of time, more into where is the feeling, what are making sure that agents are able to bubble up their thoughts and really have that ongoing communication stream. And one of the ways that we've tried to do that this past year is really by implementing an employee advisory board and identifying those folks who both have great experience but also have that capability and that confidence to be able to speak up and to speak their mind and to share their views, because the reality is not everybody's going to be comfortable in a position like that. And so you need to kind of find the people who've got that right balance between experience, influence, and confidence to be able to be that conduit between yourselves and the front line, and open that up and listen, and then feedback. Right, and just continually feedback what we've heard, what we're doing with it, and how we're going to make changes around that, and what we've heard and what we're not going to do. It's just as important to acknowledge things that you've heard that may be dissatisfiers, but they're dissatisfiers for a business reason, and to be able to articulate those as to why they happen and how you can reduce the dissatisfaction with the activity when the activity can't stop because of whatever's happening from a business side. And so I think that transparency and that communication around surveys and around data that you're getting back and what you're doing with it and why is just as important for your employees as it is for your customers.
Brett, I had fun chatting with you today. Can you please share with the CX Igniters how they can connect with you?
Absolutely. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Brett Frazer, Sunbasket. I'm happy to connect in with any CX professional. I love connecting, learning, sharing, and growing together.
And that's Brett with 2 T's, and Frazer is Frazer. Thank you again, Brett Frazer, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best. And this particular insight and information that was shared with you can be shared and collected ongoing by going to Apple Podcasts and rating and reviewing this episode and subscribing. And so we look forward to seeing you on a future Customer Service Weekly podcast. Brett, again. Thank you for listening to the Customer Service Weekly podcast. Please rate, review, subscribe, follow, and share the Customer Service Weekly podcast and register for a free membership at customerserviceweekly.org to get the latest updates on how you can help ignite the CX spirit everywhere.